My name is Emily Carter. I'm 26 years old. And the first time I ever checked my credit score, it literally shocked me. It was 412. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of glitch, some mistake, some bureaucratic mess that would take maybe 2 phone calls and a couple emails to fix. But then the woman on the phone said something that made my stomach drop. She said very calmly, very professionally, "Ma'am, according to our records, you've had multiple delinquent credit accounts since you were 18. I remember staring at my laptop screen like it was written in another language, because I had never opened a credit card, never taken out a loan, never financed anything. I had paid for everything in my life with a debit card and the occasional student aid refund. So I asked the obvious question, who opened them? The woman paused. Then she said a sentence that would change my life forever. They appear to have been opened using your social security number. And that's when I realized something that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. Someone had been using my identity for years. And the worst part, the first address attached to those accounts was my parents' house. But before I tell you how I discovered everything they'd done, I want to say something quickly. If you're listening to this story right now, take 2 seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this take a lot of time to share, and your support really helps. And I'm genuinely curious. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Okay? Now let me rewind, because to understand how everything fell apart, you need to understand my family. I grew up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew each other, where high school football games were the biggest event of the week, where parents waved at neighbors while mowing their lawns. On the outside, my family looked perfectly normal. My dad worked construction. My mom worked part-time at a dental office. We had a 2-story house with beige siding and a big maple tree in the front yard. There were Christmas lights every winter, backyard barbecues every summer, and family photos covering the living room wall. From the outside, we looked happy, but inside the house, things were a little different. My mom, Linda, had a personality that people either loved or avoided. She was charming in public, the type of woman who could strike up conversations with strangers in grocery store lines. But at home, she had this intensity. Everything had to go her way. Every decision, every conversation, every plan. If something didn't go the way she wanted, she didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just made you feel like the worst person alive. Silent treatments, guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments that somehow cut deeper than yelling ever could. My dad, Mark, was the opposite. Quiet, tired, always working. He left the house before sunrise most mornings, and when he came home, he mostly just sat in his recliner and watched TV. If my mom complained about something, he usually just nodded. "Your mother's right," he'd say, even when he didn't seem to believe it. Growing up, I thought that was just how families worked. Moms ran everything. Dads stayed out of the way. Kids tried not to cause problems. I was the oldest child. My younger brother, Tyler, was 3 years behind me. And Tyler was different. He could do absolutely anything and somehow avoid consequences. Crash his bike into the mailbox, break the living room lamp, forget to do homework for a week straight, and somehow my mom would shrug it off. "Boys will be boys," she'd say. But if I forgot to take out the trash once, suddenly I was irresponsible and ungrateful. For a long time, I thought maybe I was just the difficult child, the one who needed to try harder, be better, earn approval. So I did everything I could. Good grades, honor roll, part-time job at 16. I even helped my mom with bills sometimes when she complained about money being tight. Looking back, that's probably where everything really started. Money was always a weird subject in our house. We weren't rich, but we weren't exactly poor either. My dad worked steady construction jobs, and my mom's dental office gig paid okay. Still, my mom always talked like we were on the brink of disaster. Electric bills insane this month. Groceries are outrageous. Your father's job might slow down soon. I remember one night when I was 17. We were sitting at the kitchen table. My mom had a stack of papers in front of her. Bills, statements, random envelopes. She sighed dramatically. God, I hate dealing with all this financial stuff. I was doing homework across the table. You want help? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, then she smiled. You're such a good daughter, Emily. She slid a form across the table. Just sign here for me, sweetie. I barely looked at it. I trusted her. She was my mom, so I signed it. At the time, it felt like nothing. Just a quick scribble with a pen. But years later, I would realize that moment might have been the first domino. After high school, I stayed local and went to community college, mostly because it was cheaper, but also because my mom strongly encouraged it. Why waste money moving away, she said. You can live here for free. Free. That word would come up a lot later. During those years, I worked part-time at a coffee shop. Saved money. Focused on school. My parents occasionally asked me to help with small things. Can you put the internet bill on your card just this month? My credit card's maxed out right now. You'll get the money back next paycheck. But the truth was, I didn't even have a credit card. I had a debit card linked to my tiny checking account. So whenever my mom asked me to put something on my card, I just give her cash or send money through my bank app. It seemed normal. Parents needed help sometimes, right? Besides, she always framed it like I was doing something generous. Not every kid would help their family like this. I wanted to be that kid, the good one, the reliable one. When I was 22, I moved into my first apartment. Nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom about 20 minutes away. I remember the excitement of signing the lease. The landlord didn't even run a full credit check. He just looked at my employment history and deposit. At the time, that seemed like good luck. Now I realize it was probably the only reason I got approved. Those first few years on my own felt peaceful. I decorated the place with cheap furniture from IKEA, got a better job at a marketing agency, adopted a cat named Luna. Life felt stable, normal. Every once in a while, my mom would call asking for help again. Hey, honey, can you spot us a little money this week? Your dad's paycheck got delayed. Or sometimes it was more emotional. We've done so much for you over the years. You know family helps family. So I helped. Not huge amounts, but enough that my savings account never really grew. Still, I never thought anything suspicious was happening. Because when you trust someone your entire life, you don't imagine they're quietly destroying it behind your back. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk at work, drinking bad office coffee, scrolling through emails. A coworker named Jasmine walked over. She dropped into the chair beside my desk. You ever check your credit score? She asked. I laughed. Not really. You should, she said. Mine just went up 20 points and I feel like I won the lottery. She pulled out her phone and showed me the app she used. Credit Track, it's free. I shrugged. Does it matter that much? She looked at me like I'd just admitted I didn't know what a bank was. Emily, your credit score is basically your adult report card. Loans, apartments, cars, mortgages, everything. That night, out of pure curiosity, I downloaded the app, created an account, entered my information, name, date of birth, social security number, and then the screen loaded. I remember sitting on my couch with Luna curled up beside me. The room was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator. The number appeared. At first I laughed. That can't be right. Then I opened the details. My stomach slowly twisted into knots. There were 7 credit cards listed under my name, 2 personal loans, 1 collections account, all delinquent, all years old, all tied to my social security number. And every single one had an address history connected to the house I grew up in. My parents' house. I stared at the screen for nearly 10 minutes, trying to make sense of it. Maybe someone stole my identity. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe... Then my phone rang. It was my mom. Hi, sweetheart, she said cheerfully. How's work? I swallowed, my heart pounding. Mom, I need to ask you something. Oh? Did you ever open anything using my name? There was a pause on the line. Not long, maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Then she laughed. Emily, don't be ridiculous. You know I'd never do something like that. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But later that night, when I started digging deeper into the accounts, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of the credit cards had been opened when I was 19, and the application address listed wasn't just my parents' house. It included something else, a phone number, my mom's phone number. And suddenly, a memory flashed back in my mind. The kitchen table, a stack of papers, her sliding a form toward me. Just sign here for me, sweetie. That was the moment the first crack appeared in the story she'd told me my whole life. And deep down, I started to realize something terrifying. If my parents really had been using my identity for years, then the worst part of this story wasn't what had already happened. It was what I was about to find out next. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. My phone was still in my hand. The credit report was still open, and the number at the top of the screen still said 4/20/12. For a moment, I just stared at it, hoping it would somehow change overnight. It didn't. Luna stretched beside me and yawned, completely unaware that my entire financial life had just collapsed. I sat up slowly. My chest felt tight. There were so many questions running through my head that I didn't even know where to start. Had my parents really done this? Or was it somehow a coincidence? Some insane identity theft situation where someone just happened to also use my childhood address? I opened the first credit card account again. The account history went back 7 years. Late payments, missed payments, collections notices, thousands of dollars in balances. The address history was the same. My parents' house, the phone number was the same. My mom's cell number. I felt my stomach drop again, but there was still a small voice in my head whispering something hopeful. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe someone else had done it. Maybe my dad. Maybe a stranger. Maybe my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Don't forget we're having dinner Sunday. I stared at the message. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to call her again. Demand answers. Force the truth out. But another part of me was scared, because if she admitted it, then I'd have to face something I wasn't ready for. So instead, I replied, okay. Then I closed the app and got ready for work. But the entire day, my brain refused to focus on anything else. Every time I tried to work, the same thought kept repeating. 7 credit cards, 2 loans, collections, years of debt. And somehow I'd never known. Around lunchtime, Jasmine rolled her chair over again. You okay? She asked. I forced a smile. Yeah. Why? You look like you didn't sleep. I hesitated, then I lowered my voice. Can I ask you something? Sure. If someone used your social security number to open credit cards, she blinked. What? What? I'm just asking hypothetically. She stared at me for a long moment, then she leaned closer. Emily, did someone use your identity? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I turned my laptop screen toward her and showed the credit report. Her eyes widened instantly. Oh my God, yeah. She scrolled through the accounts, one by one, each one worse than the last. Finally, she looked up at me. Do you recognize any of these addresses? I swallowed. Yeah. Whose house? My parents'. She leaned back in her chair slowly. Emily, that's not good. No kidding. You need to freeze your credit immediately. I already did that last night. Good. She paused. Then she asked the question I had been trying not to think about. Have you talked to them? I asked my mom. And she said she didn't do anything. Jasmine gave me a look. Not judgmental, just concerned. Well, she said carefully, somebody did. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. I barely remembered driving home. The moment I walked into my apartment, I opened my laptop again. This time, I ordered the full credit report, all 3 bureaus, every account, every record. If something was wrong with my life, I needed to know how bad it was. The report took about 10 minutes to generate. Those 10 minutes felt like an hour. When it finally loaded, I started scrolling. The first thing I noticed was the timeline. The earliest account had been opened when I was 18. just 3 months after my birthday. The application address? My parents' house. The phone number? My mom's. The email? One I had never seen before. But the name attached to it was unmistakable. Emily Carter. My hands started shaking, because that meant something very specific. Someone hadn't just used my social security number. They had filled out full applications pretending to be me, and they had done it repeatedly. Year after year. I kept scrolling. Another credit card. Opened when I was 19. Another loan. Opened when I was 20. A retail credit account. A store card. Another card. Each one adding more debt. More missed payments. More damage. By the time I reached the bottom of the report, the total balance across all accounts was over $38,000. I slammed the laptop shut. My chest felt like it was caving in. $38,000. Debt I had never spent. Debt I had never even known existed. I paced around my living room, back and forth, my brain running through every possibility. Maybe my parents were victims too. Maybe someone stole documents from their house. Maybe, then another memory surfaced. Something small, something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 19, home from community college for the summer. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table again. Same spot, same stack of papers. "Hey, Em," she said. "Can you help me with something?" "What?" "Just confirm your social security number for this form." I didn't think twice. I recited it out loud. She wrote it down. At the time, it felt normal. Now it made my skin crawl. Because suddenly I realized something. My mom had always been the one handling paperwork, taxes, bills, forms, anything involving finances. And she had always asked me for information so casually. Like it was no big deal. Like she just needed it for something simple. I sat down slowly on the couch, my mind racing. Could she really have done all of this? Could my own mother have opened accounts in my name for nearly a decade? The idea felt impossible, and yet the evidence was right there on the screen. That night, I barely slept again. Every time I closed my eyes, new questions appeared. Why hadn't I noticed earlier? Why hadn't anyone contacted me? Why had my parents never mentioned anything? Around 2 in the morning, I got up and opened the report again. This time I looked closer at the payment histories, and something jumped out immediately. Most of the accounts had the same pattern. Payments for a few months, then missed payments, then collections. Which meant whoever opened them had tried, at least briefly, to keep them active, then stopped caring, then opened new ones. My stomach twisted again, because that behavior looked less like a one-time emergency and more like a pattern, a system, someone using my identity as a financial backup plan. At 3 in the morning, I finally did something I should have done earlier. I Googled what to do if someone uses your social security number. The results were terrifying. Identity theft, fraud, police reports, disputes, and one line that stood out immediately. If the person responsible is a family member, you may need to pursue legal action. Legal action. Against family. The thought made me sick. Because no matter what had happened, these are still my parents, the people who raised me, the people who packed my school lunches, the people who sat in the stands at my high school graduation. But the more I stared at the report, the harder it became to ignore the truth. Someone had destroyed my credit. Someone had buried me under tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And the trail led straight to their house. The next few days were torture. I went through work pretending everything was normal, but inside I was unraveling. Every conversation with my parents suddenly felt different. Every memory had new meaning. Friday night, my mom called again. "Are you still coming to dinner Sunday?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Good, your father misses you." I hesitated. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "Are you sure you never opened anything using my name?" There was another pause. Then her voice sharpened slightly. "Emily, why are you asking me that again? I just found some weird stuff on my credit report." She sighed loudly. "Credit reports are full of mistakes. You're worrying about nothing. But listen," she interrupted, her tone suddenly impatient. "Your father and I have enough stress already. Don't start accusing us of crazy things." The words hit harder than I expected. Accusing. Crazy. like I was the problem, like I was imagining things. I muttered a quiet, okay, and hung up. Then I sat in silence for a long time. Because suddenly something felt very wrong about that conversation. Not just what she said, but how quickly she shut it down, how defensive she sounded, and how she immediately made me feel guilty for even asking. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became, because that was something my mom had always been good at. Turning questions into accusations. Turning accusations into guilt. Making the other person apologize, even when they were right. Sunday dinner came faster than I expected, and as I drove toward my parents' house, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. The same house I had grown up in, the same driveway, the same maple tree. Everything looked exactly the same. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was walking into a place full of secrets. My mom greeted me at the door with a smile. "Honey," she hugged me like nothing was wrong. Like we hadn't had that strange phone conversation 2 days earlier. My dad was in the living room watching football. Tyler was already at the table scrolling on his phone. Everything felt normal. Too normal. Dinner started like every other family dinner. Small talk, work updates, my mom complaining about grocery prices, but the entire time my chest felt tight because I knew something they didn't. And eventually, I couldn't keep it inside anymore. Halfway through dinner, I set my fork down. "Mom," I said quietly, "can we talk about something?" She looked up. "What is it?" I took a breath. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the credit report. There are 9 accounts under my name. Silence fell across the table. My dad looked up from his plate. Tyler stopped scrolling. My mom stared at the screen for a moment. Then she leaned back in her chair and said something that made my entire body go cold. "Oh." Not surprise. Not confusion. Just oh. Like she already knew exactly what I was talking about. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. My mother hadn't been confused by my questions. She hadn't been shocked. She had been preparing. And suddenly I understood that the real story, the one she had been hiding for years, was finally about to come out. But I had no idea how much worse it was going to be. The way my mom said "oh" stayed with me long after that dinner. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't shock. It sounded like someone realizing they had finally been caught. The room went quiet. My dad shifted in his chair. Tyler looked between us like he had just walked into the middle of a movie he didn't understand. I kept my phone on the table with the credit report open. "Do you know anything about this?" I asked. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. My mom folded her arms. Her expression changed slowly. The warmth disappeared. The friendly smile. "All of it." Now she looked irritated, like I had brought up something inconvenient. "Emily," she said, "you're overreacting." My stomach dropped. Overreacting? These credit reports make mistakes all the time. But the accounts go back 7 years. That doesn't mean anything. I stared at her. The calmness in her voice was almost surreal, like this was a minor misunderstanding. "Not $38,000 of debt, Mom," I said slowly. "One of the applications used your phone number." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she picked up her glass of water and took a sip. Then she shrugged. "Well, obviously someone must have typed it in wrong." I looked at my dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at his plate. And suddenly, I felt a strange chill. Because the silence coming from him felt almost worse than her excuses. "Dad," I said quietly. "Nothing. Just the sound of the TV in the living room." Finally, he muttered something. "Your mom handles all that stuff." "Handles what? Credit cards, loans, identity theft?" I turned back to her. "Mom, these accounts were opened from this address." She rolled her eyes slightly. "Emily, this is ridiculous. Why would we open credit cards in your name?" "I don't know," I said. "But they're there." She leaned forward. And suddenly her tone changed. The softness was gone. Now there was something sharper underneath. Let me ask you something, she said. Have you been paying your bills on time? I blinked. What? Because young people rack up debt all the time and then blame other people. My jaw dropped. Are you serious? I'm just saying maybe you should look at your own spending before accusing your family of fraud. The word fraud hung in the air. She said it like I was the one committing it. Tyler finally spoke up. Wait, what's going on? I turned my phone toward him. My credit score is 422. He whistled softly. Damn, that's because someone opened 9 accounts in my name. My mom slammed her glass down on the table. Enough. Her voice was suddenly loud, sharp. You're not going to sit here and accuse me of stealing from my own daughter. I didn't accuse you. You just implied it. I asked a question. Well, I answered it. She stood up and started, gathering plates. Conversation over. Just like that, the message was clear. Drop it, or things would get ugly. I looked at my dad again. Do you know anything about this? He rubbed his face slowly. I don't deal with the credit cards. That's not what I asked. Silence again. And that was the moment something shifted inside me. Because suddenly I realized something important. Neither of them looked confused. Neither of them looked shocked. They looked defensive. And defensive people usually have something to hide. I pushed my chair back. I'm going to figure out what happened, I said quietly. My mom laughed, a short, dismissive laugh. Good luck with that. I left shortly after that. The drive home felt surreal. My mind kept replaying the dinner conversation, every word, every reaction. The more I thought about it, the clearer something became. My mom hadn't denied it in a normal way. She had turned it around on me, blamed my spending, made me look unreasonable. It was the same tactic she used when I was growing up. If I questioned something, she made me feel like I was the problem. But this time, the stakes were different. This wasn't about curfew or chores. This was my future. My ability to buy a car, get an apartment, maybe someday buy a house. And right now, all of it was buried under someone else's debt. When I got home, I opened my laptop again. This time, I started digging deeper. Not just into the accounts, but into the transactions. Some of the statements were still available online. I logged into one of the credit card portals using the forgot password option. It sent a reset link to the email tied to the account, the same strange email I had seen earlier. But when I tried to access it, it was already locked. Too many login attempts. Someone had been trying to access it recently. My heart started pounding. Why would someone try to log in now? Unless they knew I had discovered something. I opened another account. This one worked. The statement loaded slowly. Then the transactions appeared. Gas stations, grocery stores, Walmart, Target, restaurants, all located within 15 miles of my parents' house. Not my apartment, not my job, their town. I felt the air leave my lungs, because now there was no logical explanation left. These cards weren't just open at their address, they were being used near their house, over and over, for years. I kept scrolling through the statements, and then something else caught my attention. A purchase from a furniture store. $3,000. The date was 2 years ago. I remembered that year, because that was when my parents remodeled their living room. New couch, new coffee table. New TV stand. My mom had bragged about the great deal she found. I suddenly felt nauseous, because now I knew exactly how she paid for it. With my name, my social security number, my credit. I closed the laptop again. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just identity theft. This was something deeper, more personal. A betrayal that stretched across nearly a decade. And the worst part? They didn't seem sorry. Not even a little. Monday morning at work, I told Jasmine everything. The dinner, the denial, the transactions. Her reaction was immediate. Emily, this is fraud. I know. You need to report it. They're my parents. That doesn't change the law. I rubbed my temples. I don't want to send my mom to jail. Then what do you want to do? That question hung in the air. Because honestly, I didn't know. All I knew was that something had to change. Because if I ignored it, the debt would still exist. and eventually it would destroy everything I had worked for. Over the next week, I started calling the credit card companies, one by one, explaining the situation. The conversations were exhausting. Most of them told me the same thing. If the accounts were opened fraudulently, I could dispute them, but I would need to file an identity theft report, possibly a police report, and if the investigation traced the accounts back to my parents, there could be legal consequences. Every time they said that, my chest tightened. Legal consequences for my own family, but the alternative was worse, because if I didn't fight it, the debt stayed with me. All $38,000. One evening, after a long day of phone calls and paperwork, I checked my email. There was a new alert from the credit monitoring app. New credit inquiry detected. My heart dropped. I opened the alert immediately. Someone had attempted to apply for another credit card. Using my social security number, the application had been blocked because my credit was frozen, but the attempt was still logged. And the location of the application? My parents' town. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They were still trying, even after I confronted them, even after everything. My hands started shaking again. Because that meant something terrifying. This hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't been a one-time emergency. It had become a habit, a system they relied on. My identity wasn't just something they used once. It was their backup plan, their safety net. And now that I had frozen my credit, that safety net was gone. That night my phone rang. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Hello? Her voice was cold. What did you do? My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? Why is your credit frozen? So she knew. Of course she knew. Of course she knew. Because she had just tried to use it. I froze it because someone keeps opening accounts in my name. Silence. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. You're making a huge mistake. My heart started pounding. What does that mean? It means you're about to cause a lot of problems for this family. For this family? Yes. Her tone was suddenly angry, sharp. If those accounts disappear, people are going to start asking questions. Maybe they should. You ungrateful little. She stopped herself, took a breath. Then her voice softened again, that familiar manipulation sliding back into place. Emily, we did what we had to do. The words hit me like a punch. We, not I, we. So you're admitting it. It wasn't like we had a choice. You had plenty of choices. Not when your father got hurt. I blinked. What are you talking about? That construction accident 5 years ago. He couldn't work for months. So you stole my identity. We borrowed. $38,000. 7 credit cards. 2 loans. Years of missed payments. And she called it borrowing. You never paid it back. We planned to. When? She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that made my stomach twist. You owe us, Emily. I owe you. For raising you. For feeding you. For everything we sacrificed. I felt something inside me snap, because suddenly I understood the real reason she wasn't apologizing. In her mind, she believed she had the right to use my life as a financial resource, the right to take what she wanted, and the worst part, she truly didn't think she had done anything wrong. That was the moment everything changed. Because the woman on the phone, the one telling me I owed her for being born, was not the mother I thought I knew. And as the conversation ended, one terrifying thought settled into my mind. If she believed she was justified, then she probably wasn't finished yet. And I had no idea how far she was willing to go to keep the truth buried. After that phone call, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on my couch with the lights off. Luna curled up beside me like she could sense something was wrong. My mom's words kept echoing in my head. You owe us. Not an apology, not regret, just entitlement. $38,000 of debt, 7 years of fraud, and she believed it was justified because she raised me. At around 4 in the morning, I opened my laptop again. Not to check the credit report this time. I already knew what it said. Instead, I started reading about identity theft cases involving family members, and the stories were disturbingly similar. Parents opening credit cards in their children's names, using their social security numbers for loans, ruining their financial futures before they even realized it. But what shocked me most was how often the victims did nothing, not because they didn't care, because they were afraid. Afraid of destroying their family, afraid of legal consequences, afraid of being blamed. And suddenly, I understood something that made my chest tighten. My mom was counting on that fear. She believed I would stay quiet, because that's what I had always done growing up. Stayed quiet, kept the peace, avoided conflict. But this time, the cost of silence was my entire future. By the time the sun started coming up, I felt exhausted and empty. I went to work anyway. But halfway through the morning, Jasmine took one look at me and frowned. "You look terrible." "Thanks. No, seriously." She pulled a chair over. "What happened?" So I told her everything. The dinner, the phone call, the admission, the "you owe us." By the time I finished, my voice felt raw. Jasmine didn't interrupt once. She just listened. When I finally stopped talking, she leaned back slowly. "Emily, that's not just fraud." "I know. That's manipulation." I let out a tired laugh. "You think?" "No, I mean your whole life." That made me pause. "What do you mean?" She tapped the desk thoughtfully. "Think about it. Your mom convinced you that helping them financially was normal. She made you feel guilty for asking questions. And now she's trying to make you feel responsible for their debt." I stared at the floor, because hearing someone else say it out loud made something inside me shift. For years, I had believed my mom's version of reality. That family loyalty meant sacrifice. That good daughters help their parents no matter what. But this was different. This wasn't sacrifice. It was exploitation. Jasmine broke the silence. "You can't let this go." "I know. But I don't want to destroy my family." She sighed. "Emily, they already destroyed something." I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew she was right. The next few days were some of the hardest of my life. I started the official identity theft dispute process. Every account required paperwork, statements, proof of identity, affidavits. Each form asked the same question in slightly different ways. Do you know the person responsible? Every time I reached that question, my hand hesitated, because writing the truth meant crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Eventually, I started leaving the space blank, not lying, but not answering either. One afternoon, while filling out another dispute form, I got a text from Tyler. "Mom says you froze your credit." Of course, she told him. I sighed and typed back. "Yeah." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, you replied. "Why?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then I decided to be honest. "Because someone opened accounts in my name." Another pause. "Then, you think it was Mom?" "I don't think. I know." The typing bubble appeared again, then vanished. For almost 2 minutes. Finally, another message arrived. "Can we talk?" That was unexpected. Tyler and I had always gotten along, but we weren't exactly close. He was 23 now, still living at home, working part-time at an auto shop. Most of our conversations were quick texts or occasional family dinners. "Sure," I replied. We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between my apartment and our parents' house that evening. When I arrived, Tyler was already sitting in a booth. He looked nervous, which was strange. Tyler was usually the most laid-back person I knew. I slid into the seat across from him. Hey. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he leaned forward. "Mom says you're accusing her of stealing your identity." "I'm not accusing. I have proof." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, about that." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "What?" He looked around the diner like he wanted to make sure nobody was listening. Then he lowered his voice. "Emily, I think I know what's going on." My heart started beating faster. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "I saw her do it once." The words hit me like ice water. "When?" "Couple years ago." "What exactly did you see?" "She was filling out a credit card application online." "That's normal." "Yeah, except the name on the form was yours." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You're sure?" "Positive." "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged helplessly. "I didn't think it was a big deal at the time." "How is that not a big deal?" Mom said it was temporary. The same word she used on the phone. Borrowing. Temporary. Always framed like it wasn't serious. Tyler continued quietly. She said it helped the family. I felt a wave of anger rising in my chest. How long has she been doing it? I don't know. But I've seen her use your information before. My head spun. Before. Plural. Tyler, why are you telling me this now? He looked down at his coffee. Because she tried to do it again yesterday. My stomach dropped. What? She was on the phone with a bank. And she was pissed when it got declined. My hands started shaking under the table. Because that matched the credit alert I received. She said you screwed everything up by freezing your credit. Of course she did. For years, she had treated my identity like a backup credit line, and I had just shut it off. Tyler looked up again. You need to be careful. Why? Because Mom's freaking out. What does that mean? She thinks you're going to report her. I swallowed. And if I do? He hesitated. Then he said something that chilled me to the bone. She said if you ruin this family, she'll make sure everyone knows what kind of daughter you are. I blinked. What does that even mean? She didn't explain. But I understood exactly what it meant. My mom had always been very good at controlling the narrative, turning people against each other, spreading just enough gossip to shape opinions. If she decided I was the villain, she would make sure everyone believed it. Relatives. Family friends. Anyone who would listen. Tyler pushed his coffee aside. Look, I'm not defending what she did, but you know how she is. Yes, I did. And that realization hit me harder than anything else, because my entire childhood suddenly looked different through this new lens. Every time she guilt-tripped me. Every time she made me feel selfish for setting boundaries. Every time she insisted family loyalty meant obedience. It had all been part of the same pattern. Control. Tyler sighed. What are you going to do? I stared out the diner window. The sky was dark, streetlights reflecting on the pavement. I don't know yet, but deep down, I knew something had to change, because the woman who raised me had just threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't stay quiet. And the worst part? She probably believed she was justified. When I got home that night, I felt emotionally drained, like I had been carrying a weight for years without realizing it. I sat on the couch and replayed the conversation with Tyler. One sentence kept repeating in my mind. I saw her do it once. Which meant this wasn't speculation anymore. It was confirmed. My mother had knowingly opened credit accounts in my name. More than once. The realization felt like losing something I couldn't get back. Not just trust. But the version of my family I thought existed. For a long time, I just sat there in silence. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Jasmine. Did you talk to your brother? Yeah. And? She admitted it. 3 dots appeared instantly. Oh my God. I know. There was a pause. Then another message arrived. Okay, I need to tell you something. What? My cousin works in fraud investigations. That made me sit up slightly. Seriously? Yeah. She deals with identity theft cases all the time. My heart started beating faster again. What does she say? Jasmine replied almost immediately. She says cases involving family are more common than you think. That didn't surprise me anymore. But her next message did. And she says victims almost always wait too long to protect themselves. I stared at the screen. What do you mean? Meaning the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to prove fraud. My chest tightened. Because suddenly the situation felt more urgent than ever. For years, my parents had quietly built a mountain of debt using my identity. And if I didn't act soon, that mountain might become impossible to escape. A minute later, Jasmine sent one more message. My cousin said she's willing to talk to you. I stared at the phone. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, someone was offering something my parents never had. Help! And as exhausted as I felt, a small spark of hope finally started to flicker. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as my mom wanted me to believe. Maybe there was a way to fix this. But if there was, it meant stepping into a fight I had spent my entire life trying to avoid. And something told me my mother wasn't going to let that happen quietly. 2 days later, I met Jasmine's cousin. Her name was Rachel. We sat at a quiet coffee shop near downtown during my lunch break. Rachel looked like someone who had seen a lot of difficult situations before. Calm. Focused. The kind of person who listened more than she talked. After we ordered drinks, she opened a small notebook. Jasmine told me a little about your situation, she said, but I'd like to hear it from you. So I told her everything, from the credit score, to the dinner confrontation, to the phone call where my mom said I owed them, to Tyler admitting he had seen her filling out applications in my name. Rachel didn't interrupt once, she just wrote notes while I spoke. When I finally finished, she leaned back in her chair. Okay, she said. That's a lot. You think? She smiled slightly. Unfortunately, it's not unusual. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. You mean parents do this often? More than people realize? Why? She shrugged gently. Sometimes desperation. Sometimes entitlement. Sometimes they convince themselves they're borrowing. My mom's voice echoed in my head. We borrowed. Rachel tapped her pen on the notebook. The important thing right now isn't why they did it. It's how you protect yourself. I nodded slowly. That's what I want. Good. She flipped to a new page. First question. Have you officially reported the identity theft yet? No. Have you named a suspect in the dispute forms? No. She nodded. That gives us some flexibility. Us. Hearing someone say us felt strangely comforting, because for weeks I had felt like I was fighting this alone. Rachel continued, right now you have 2 options. Option 1, you pursue full identity theft charges. That means police involvement. Possibly criminal consequences. My stomach tightened. And option 2, you gather evidence first. What kind of evidence? She looked directly at me. Proof that they knowingly used your identity. My heart started beating faster. I already have the credit report. That shows fraud occurred, but it doesn't prove who did it. But Tyler saw her. Witness testimony helps, Rachel said. But investigators still prefer documentation. What kind? She leaned forward slightly. Emails, applications, recorded admissions, anything linking your parents directly to the accounts. I thought about my mom's phone call. The way she said, we borrowed. I hadn't recorded it. I suddenly wished I had. Rachel must have seen the realization on my face. You can still get evidence. How? She paused. Then she asked something unexpected. Do your parents still believe you're undecided about reporting them? Yes. Good. My stomach twisted slightly. Why is that good? Because it gives you time. For what? To gather proof. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Not revenge. Not anger. Something else. Strategy. Rachel flipped another page in her notebook. If your mother thinks she can still manipulate you into staying quiet, then she'll keep talking. I understood immediately. You want her to admit it again. Rachel nodded. Exactly. And this time, you document it. The idea made my hands feel cold. Secretly collecting evidence against my own mother. It felt wrong. But then I remembered her words. You owe us. And the way she threatened to destroy my reputation. Rachel continued. There's another reason to do this carefully. What? If investigators believe you knowingly allowed the accounts to exist, some of the debt could still fall on you. My heart skipped. Even if it's fraud? Yes. Especially if the person responsible is family. I leaned back slowly. Because suddenly the stakes felt even higher. This wasn't just about exposing what they did. It was about protecting my future. Rachel finished her coffee. Here's my advice. Take the next couple of weeks to gather evidence. How? Have conversations with them. Ask questions. Get them talking. And record everything. My pulse quickened. Is that legal? In your state, yes. One-party consent, meaning I could legally record a conversation if I was part of it. Rachel stood up and slid a small card across the table. My number. If you get anything important, call me. I stared at the card for a moment. Thank you. She smiled. You deserve your life back. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the day, because until that moment, I hadn't realized how much of my life felt stolen. Not just my credit, my trust, my sense of safety. Even my childhood memories now felt different, like they had been built on a foundation that wasn't real. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, trying to decide what to do first. Rachel's advice was clear: gather evidence, but actually doing it felt terrifying, because it meant confronting my parents again, pretending I was still unsure, pretending I might forgive them, pretending I might let it go. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Are you coming for dinner Sunday?" Of course, the routine continued, like nothing had changed. I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed back, "Yeah." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Good, we need to talk." My stomach tightened. About what? But I didn't ask. Instead, I simply replied, "Okay." Sunday arrived faster than I expected. The drive to my parents' house felt strangely familiar. The same road, the same houses, the same maple tree in the yard. But everything looked different now, like I was seeing the place through someone else's eyes. When I walked inside, my mom greeted me like always. Bright smile, quick hug, too cheerful. My dad was already at the table. Tyler leaned against the counter scrolling his phone. Dinner started normally. Too normally. Then halfway through the meal, my mom put her fork down. "We need to clear the air." I felt my pulse quicken. "Okay." She folded her hands on the table. "Your father and I have been talking." I glanced at him. He avoided my eyes again. "And we think you're making this situation bigger than it needs to be." There it was, the familiar dismissal. I forced my voice to stay calm. "How so?" She sighed dramatically. "Yes, we used your name for some accounts." My heart skipped. She was admitting it, out loud. And yes, things got a little out of control. A little. $38,000. But we always intended to fix it. When? When things got better. "Mom, some of those accounts are 7 years old." She waved a hand dismissively. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" "The point is, family takes care of each other." My fingers tightened around my glass. "And you think this was taking care of me? We raised you." There it was again. That same justification. Like raising a child created a lifetime debt. She leaned closer. "Emily, if you report this, you'll destroy this family." I felt my phone in my pocket, recording quietly. "Why would it destroy the family if you didn't do anything wrong?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Don't twist my words. I'm not. You're threatening us. I'm protecting myself." She laughed softly. But there was no warmth in it. "You always were dramatic." Tyler shifted uncomfortably beside us. My dad cleared his throat. But neither of them stopped her. Neither of them defended me. She leaned back again. "Let's be realistic. You're not going to report your own parents." My heart pounded. Why not? Because you're not that kind of person. Her confidence was chilling. She truly believed she still controlled the outcome. That I would eventually back down. That guilt would win. I took a slow breath. "What if I don't?" The room went quiet. Her smile faded slightly. "Then I guess we'll all have to deal with the consequences." "Like what?" She held my gaze. "Like the truth coming out." "What truth?" She tilted her head slightly. "The truth about how you've treated this family." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. She was preparing to rewrite the story. Make me the villain. Make herself the victim. Just like she always had. But this time something inside me felt different. Because for the first time I knew something she didn't. My phone was recording every word. And as she continued talking, digging herself deeper into her own story, I realized something important. My mom believed she had already won. She believed the pressure would break me. She believed I would protect her no matter what she did. But the truth was, for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. And she had no idea what was coming next. I didn't confront them that night. That was the hardest part. Sitting at that dinner table. Listening to my mom casually justify 7 years of fraud and pretending I was still unsure about what to do. Inside, my heart was racing, but on the outside, I stayed calm, quiet, just like she expected, because for the first time in my life, I was letting her underestimate me. When dinner ended, I hugged my dad goodbye. He barely squeezed back. My mom walked me to the door. "You'll think about what we talked about," she said. It wasn't a question, it was an expectation. "I will," I replied. She smiled, satisfied, because she believed the conversation had gone exactly the way she wanted. As I walked to my car, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. The recording had ended. 22 minutes of conversation, and inside that recording, my mom admitted they used my name, more than once, on purpose. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because something strange was happening inside me. The fear that had followed me for weeks was fading. And in its place, something steadier was growing. Resolve. The next morning, I called Rachel. "I have something," I told her. "Good," she said. "Come by my office." Her office was inside a small fraud investigation firm downtown. Nothing flashy, just a quiet space with a few desks and glass offices. I sat across from her and played the recording. She didn't interrupt. She just listened carefully. When it finished, she nodded slowly. "That's exactly what we needed." My chest loosened slightly. "Really?" "Yes. She clearly acknowledges using your identity, and she frames it as intentional." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "With this recording, your credit reports, and your brother's statement, you have a very strong case." Hearing the word case still felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide how far you want to go." "What do you mean?" "You can submit the evidence to the credit bureaus. That should remove the accounts. And the banks? They'll investigate the fraud. And my parents?" Rachel paused. "They may face legal consequences." There it was again. The part that made everything feel heavier. My parents. The people who raised me. The people who packed my school lunches. But also the people who buried me under $38,000 of debt. Rachel spoke gently. "Emily, whatever happens next is the result of their choices. Not mine." "Their choices." I nodded slowly. "Okay." The next few weeks felt like a strange mix of tension and relief. Rachel helped me file official identity theft reports. The recording was submitted as evidence. The credit bureaus opened investigations. Each bank began reviewing the accounts tied to my name. And slowly, things started moving. One account was frozen. Then another. Then another. Every time I received a notification, my heart pounded, because each step brought me closer to reclaiming something that had been stolen. But it also brought the truth closer to my parents. 3 weeks later, my mom called. Her voice sounded different, less confident. "Emily, did someone contact you about the credit cards?" I kept my tone neutral. "Yes." "What did you tell them? The truth?" There was a long silence. Then her voice sharpened. "You reported us. I reported fraud. You know exactly what you did." I didn't respond, because for once, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. She continued. "Do you understand what this could do to your father? He should have thought about that before using my identity." Her voice rose. "You ungrateful little." Then she stopped again. The line went quiet. And when she spoke next, her tone had changed. Soft, almost desperate. "Emily, we're your parents. I know. Families don't do this to each other." My chest tightened, but not with guilt, with clarity. "Families don't steal from each other either." She hung up. After that call, I didn't hear from her again for weeks. The investigations continued. The banks traced the applications, IP addresses, phone numbers, addresses. All of it led back to my parents' house. Exactly where I knew it would. Eventually, the results came in. Every fraudulent account was removed from my credit report. $38,000 of debt. Gone. My credit score didn't jump overnight. But slowly, month by month, it began to recover. The first time I checked it after the removals, it was already over 600. I cried when I saw that number, not because it was perfect, but because it meant I finally had my future back. The consequences for my parents were complicated. The banks pursued the debt directly. Some accounts were sent to collections under their names. There were legal meetings, negotiations. I wasn't involved in most of it, and honestly, I didn't want to be. My role had been to tell the truth. What happened after that was no longer my responsibility. My dad eventually called me once. Just once. His voice sounded older. Tired. "Emily," he said quietly. "Yeah?" I should have stopped it. The honesty caught me off guard. But I didn't. I didn't know what to say. After a moment, he added, "You didn't deserve that." Then he hung up. It wasn't a full apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I ever expected. Tyler moved out of the house a few months later. He said the atmosphere there had become unbearable. My mom never contacted me again. Not once. And honestly, that silence hurt less than I thought it would. Because over time, something else replaced the sadness. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when you stop carrying someone else's guilt. A year later, I moved into a new apartment. A nicer one, with big windows and hardwood floors. My credit score had climbed into the 700s. For the first time in my life, I felt like my future actually belonged to me. Sometimes people ask if I regret reporting what happened, if I wish I had handled it differently. The honest answer? For a long time, I did feel guilty. Because society teaches us that family loyalty should come above everything, even ourselves. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's control. And protecting yourself from people who hurt you, even if they're family, isn't betrayal. It's survival. Today, my life looks completely different than it did when this story started. I still work at the same marketing agency. Jasmine is still one of my closest friends. Luna still curls up next to me every night. But the biggest difference is something you can't see. For the first time in my life, I trust myself, my instincts, my boundaries. And that's something nobody can take away again. So now I'm curious. If you discovered that your own family had secretly used your identity for years, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have reported them or tried to protect the relationship? Let me know in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think. And stories like yours are sometimes even crazier than mine.